And here's Mama. We're just out for our morning walk. And how I've worked with her is that she doesn't really need, right, Mama? You don't need a lead. You follow instructions. Right, baby? Yes. You follow instructions. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. That was Mama. I was walking her this morning, and I wanted to show folks that a leash can be used or it can be not used. My dogs have been on voice command for decades. I've trained my dogs for voice command, and the use for a lead is not as a controlling measure. It is used as a correction measure. And so what I'm saying is that I teach all of my animals proper management and expectation and boundaries. They have to learn expectation and boundaries and routine. And that's what's missing that I see with a lot of people who want to have protective breed dogs, namely pit bulls, German shepherds, Rottweilers, and such. Mama, she looks pretty cute. She's pretty innocent. She's a very big dog at 110 pounds. She has some Mastiff in her, but also American Bulldog. So she does have aggression. And to let you know, when I adopted her, I took her from one of my clients who was not able to bring Mama into housing with her because this individual had two other dogs and they were much smaller. Mama, at such a large dog, a lot of places don't want to allow a big dog, and then they see that their impressions. This is an aggressive breed dog, and I constantly hear, oh, that's the biggest pit bull I've ever seen. And I tell folks, no, she is not a pit bull. She may have resemblance to that, but if you look at her size, it's way too big for a pit bull. And that's the thing that a lot of folks do. They misinterpret what their dogs are and who they are. And under dog management, that's something that you really have to know the characteristics of the breed that you're adopting or going to be training. And I grew up with dogs all my life. My mother had Dachshunds, the little wiener dogs, and they weren't very well managed by my mother or father, and they were extremely aggressive dogs. For being so little, they attacked everyone who wasn't considered family or somebody that we didn't tell them to lay off. They would attack, literally. And then because of growing crime back in the mid-60s, there were a lot of kidnappings, and then our neighborhood had a lot of burglaries, a lot of daytime burglaries, and that was because the color TV had just come out, and so thieves were targeting homes that had color TVs, that was kind of the new thing. We were in upper middle class neighborhood, and so these were targeted neighborhoods. They could clearly, they were watching the homes, obviously, because they knew which homes to hit and at what times. So they were organized back then. And so the second time after our home was burglarized, and we were terrorized, because my family only had the one Dachshund inside the house. So obviously, if there's two people, that dog's not going to do anything. One person, I tell you, those wiener dogs are aggressive and they do bite. And my mother's wiener dogs bit everybody and treat a lot of people. So that wasn't a good management situation on my mother's part. But then my dad, because I screamed so much that about the wiener dogs, because I was tripping over them, and I didn't have a great relationship with the dogs, because the dogs were mom's dogs, and the dog hung out with mom, so not so much us kids. And so I was for the longest time, I pleaded with my dad for a German Shepherd, or a German Shepherd-like dog. And on my birthday in 1968, my dad brought home a Belgian Shepherd puppy. And so I raised that puppy, and that was a very protective dog. And my dad bought that Belgian Shepherd because of the protective nature of a dog like that. Then the guarding inherencies that these dogs have from the get-go. So you know that this is going to be a dog that can protect the family, protect the home, and when people see a dog like that, they're less likely to break into our home and move on to another one. And that brings me up to today. Through the years, I learned a lot about the different breeds of dogs. I've had protective guarding dogs, I've had hunting dogs, I've had show dogs, and so I've had quite a selection of dogs. And one of the most important things is building trust with that animal. That's the first step of really good management. Trust, building trust. And when I first adopted Mama, let me give you a little background. She is, here in the city of Oakland, a registered dangerous vicious dog, because she has bitten a number of people and attacked a number of people. And I advocate for her in the sense that she wasn't well managed. And in fact, the situation that she was in, everything was in a state of turmoil or chaos, because the previous owner, all that person did was yell and scream. And so the dog perceives all that yelling, screaming, and anxiety as danger. And so the dog reacted the way that it was programmed to react, and so it lashed out at people, it bit people. And so I blamed the previous owner, and that owner got it from somebody who had abandoned Mama. And so Mama had a lot of trust issues, and it took some time for her to really bond with me. And now she is a fabulous dog, and I've reworked everything. She no longer has those aggressive issues and tendencies. They're properly managed now, and in fact, in a year and a half, she is no longer the dog that she was when I first got her. Now she's taught, and she's learned boundaries and expectations, and that's on both sides. The dog has expectations also, and you need to meet those expectations. Expectations is that you provide a safe place for them, that they feel safe, that they feel a part of the pack, because she doesn't have another dog to associate with. I'm her pack. And so I have to really engage and make her feel wanted, and this is home. And so that's what I've done, and that's what really builds trust. Another thing that works on building trust: don't yell at the dog, don't hit the dog. I don't do that. I've always used a calm demeanor in my training, and so people have noticed that for years. Out here in East Oakland, when I had my pit bulls, I didn't walk them on a lead, and Oakland Police Department, they would watch me. Only one officer once said, could I see you have the leads? Could you hook your dogs up. I'm not comfortable with seeing them walking freely like they are, and so I did. It's not a big deal. My dogs understand, because they understand that the leash is not a punishment. The lead is typically a source of security for them, and it's a tool that I use to correct them. And that's why they're so good off lead, because they want their freedom, and being off lead gives them freedom, but then they also understand expectation. That I expect them to respond to me and follow instructions when I give them. And those are boundaries, and dogs learn that. They learn expectation and boundaries. They also have expectations, and so they expect you to respond positively when they do what you ask them to do. And I always do that. I always praise Mama, tell her she's a good girl, that was really good, and that's what reinforces trust with the animal. And it's really important, again, because that animal, besides learning basic commands and orders, you can also train for guarding, and that's what the purpose is of walking her without a lead. In this particular neighborhood, it's very dangerous. I've been attacked. I was hit right here with a baseball bat when I was first homeless out here. Also, I've been attacked inside my shelter several times. And that was after I no longer had Pandora, my pit bull. I had Pandora when I first came out here in 2014, and unfortunately she aged out, and so in July of 2016 I ended up putting her down, and I didn't have a dog, and I never got another dog, because here was the reason why I didn't want another dog. It was already tough enough to get housing or locate housing without a pet. And then if you have a pet, like when I had Pandora, nobody would rent to me. Even the slumlord that I had down the street here, she was very hesitant because of my dogs, and so she was a problem landlord to begin with. She's been indicted on a lot of different things here in Oakland. She's been paying bribes to city officials, city building inspectors, and having all sorts of illegal work done in her slum housing, and she has 600 of these here in Oakland. And I'm hoping that one of the new mayors, if not me, deals with her when they're elected, because people like that, they're very harmful. They create dangerous, life-threatening situations for their own profit. But anyway, back to the dog. Mama has been a great student. Once you've taught all the trust, you've built great trust with them, and you have to feed them well too. You can't feed them garbage. And the problem with Mama that I still have with her, I'm probably never going to be able to break her of this, is that, on our walks, she'll pick up, throw away garbage, chicken bones and all sorts of stuff, and just go to town on them. And that's how she was raised with the previous owner that I got her from. And I'm not blaming the previous owner, because she wasn't a dog person to begin with, because when she was housed, she didn't have a dog. And then all of a sudden, this person abandoned Mama, and this individual took Mama with them, when they became homeless, and Mama became protection for this person. But without training, without understanding what's going on, the situation, the dog's confused, and so it's going to lash out like it did, and then it got confiscated by the city of Oakland for 2 weeks, to make sure that she didn't have rabies or anything. And that's another thing, maintenance of a dog, even outside being homeless, is possible, because the medications, the vaccines are available, and you don't have to have a veterinary license to get it. Over here in San Leandro, there's a place where you can get the rabies, you can get distemper, all the different standard shots. And if you know how to inject, that could save you a tremendous amount of money, because the vaccines are typically between $5 and $15, whereas you go into a veterinary office, it could run you $25 up to $50 for that exact same shot. I was fortunate for a number of years, up until about year 2000 or so, or a little after 2000. It was actually 2012 when our family veterinarian, he passed away. He had been our only veterinarian for decades. It started with my mother back in the 50s with him when he first opened his office, and Dr. Lloyd Freitas, he gave us family discounts, and we enjoyed a lot of the benefits of being close friends with a veterinarian, and saved thousands of dollars in procedures, because after he passed on and I needed to get veterinary care for my dogs that were existing, it was extremely expensive, very, very expensive. And even clipping their nails can be, well, I was paying $10 at best. And then my doctor, Dr. Freitas, said, why don't you just get the tools yourself? You can get them. And so I've always had tools to take care of the basic maintenance of the dogs. And so basic maintenance is making sure that their toenails are clipped properly and not so long that it's causing pain, when they walk. So these are some of the basic tools that you're going to need. This is a nail trimmer right here, and it has a depth gauge, and so you can see right there, it measures. It will only allow you a certain amount of cut, and typically if the dog's toenails are extremely long, you may need to make 2 or 3 clippings, and this is very sharp and very quick. And then if you have dogs that are kind of really sensitive to what goes on with their feet, there's also a grinder, and this thing is near silent when it's running. You just feel it. I'm going to turn it on, and it's running right now. You can see it running, and it's silent, and so the dog just feels a slight vibration on its toenails, and so it doesn't freak the dog out. And after using this a little bit, the dog gets used to it, and it just becomes very commonplace, and so they don't think anything of it. But you have to do it often enough where the animal knows what to expect. And the most important thing about introducing new stuff to an animal is making sure that it has a very positive experience, a very positive experience with that new introduction, regardless of what it is. I guess when, just like my pit bull, when she was much younger and we were starting to take her out to the lake with us so that she wasn't left at home and we didn't have to have a babysitter for her, we'd take her to the lake. But it was getting her used to boating and the slipperiness of the deck sometimes, and that's why we had a carpeted interior for our decking on both of our larger boats. Even our sport boat was all carpeted. So the dogs had no issues with the boat. In fact, they loved boating. But again, maintenance, there was the life jackets that were required. We had life jackets for both of them, even though one of the dogs was an excellent swimmer. Accidents happen, and so out on the lake while you're underway, we always had life jackets on our animals in the event that they were somehow thrown overboard. And that flotation vest made sure that even if they were injured, that we could retrieve them very quickly. And so that's just another part of maintenance. And then just the other day, you saw that I had bought, I'm working on an issue here, living out on the streets. People throw a lot of glass out on the streets, unfortunately. And so Mama's been having some issues with getting her, the pads on her paws cut. And so you saw I gotten these for her. These are a little bit small. This is a size 7. This is supposed to fit a large German Shepherd Rottweiler. And so I got the next size up, which is size 8. It's supposed to be here later today. I got a different color. This one is black. The new ones are a khaki color. And so they're more like beige green color, and they're bigger. And so I expect to have them on hand tomorrow, and I'm going to try them on there and see which one actually fits her paws the best. And they weren't that terribly expensive, but what now with some shoes and using them regularly when we step outside of the K-rails, it allows her pads to heal up and recover. And then the bottoms here, this no skid rubber, protects her from being cut anymore by glass that she may happen upon, or even sharp metal. And this is also resistant to needles on the ground, because once in a great while we'll see a needle on the ground, or somebody throws a bag away where they've illegally dumped syringes on the street and don't have covers on the ends. And so this also protects Mama from being stuck by that. And so I have a lot of concerns with things. I try and spot them before we walk close by, but sometimes Mama gets in front of me 20, 25 feet, which is fine, because that's my voice range that I'm comfortable with. And I can tell her to stop, and she instantly stops and freezes. And also what we worked on for the last year and a half, which is extremely important, being dog reactive. And she was reactive to people. She was reactive to other dogs. And so it's been a year and a half. Now, the only time that she's really reactive to people is when she's on guard duty behind the K-rail. And so that's when she puts up her show. Outside, I'm 98% sure of everything that she does. And that 2% is the variable that nobody can predict. But through all my experience and working with an extreme amount of dogs in the past, because a lot of the training that I pass on to my animals here is also the training that I learned in counterterrorism, working with search and rescue dogs. And so a lot of what I teach and what I apply are the same things that we use in counterterrorism when we're training protective dogs, search dogs, rescue dogs. So the techniques and the theories are all very similar, and they work. And I've always applied them to the dogs, and Mama is no exception to the rule. She just had to learn boundaries and expectation. And that's one of the most important things for you folks to understand about dog training, is that number one, you have to have the dog trust you unconditionally. And my dogs have all trusted me unconditionally. Number two, you have to create expectation and boundaries, and it's a two-way street. The dog has expectations and boundaries, and you have to recognize those, and you have to set up those expectations and boundaries, and then be consistent. Very consistent. I am always consistent with what I do. Even when I'm not training, it's still consistent. And so it's real important to have that consistency. And then routine. You have to have, the dog is most comfortable with the routine. And routine, I mean, there's things that you do throughout the day which happen day in, day out as the day progresses, and it's just normal. And so the dog develops expectations and knows what is normal and what is not normal. And when it's not normal, that's when they go into protect mode. And when you teach them, what kind of protection that you allow, that's what makes them extremely great, and also very dangerous. And so all of my dogs in the past, they've had a trigger word for when myself or my wife was in trouble, and they would instantly attack the person in sight, or even touching one of us or nearing one of us. I cite that early on in my training when I first got Pandora, and she was a rescue from the Oakland SPCA, and she had a lot of aggression issues. In fact, she was returned for the final time by the second owner. And when I got her, they let me know that she had issues with small children, men with hats, and people with canes. And so that gave me clues as to what I had to deal with, and I assured them that all of those can be dealt with, and so I adopted Pandora, and she became an incredible dog and very protective dog, in the fact that one evening, her and I, we were out walking, and most I'm a CCW holder, and so I always kept my weapon hidden on my person. And I walked her, and I walked her. She was still under training at the time, and so I had a lead on her. And then she alerted. She yanked me and alerted me to 3 people running towards me. They couldn't see her because we were in between a car, and she must have caught sight of them, and then also the wind was blowing it in from them towards us, so we were downwind, and so she may have picked up a scent from them, and that triggered her. And as soon as they got up close, I could see a gun. I just let the leash go because I wanted to create a distraction with her, and at the same time I would be drawing my weapon and to fire back at this person. If he had raised up his gun, I would have fired immediately. But because they saw her coming at them, my pit bull, they took off. And so because she was under training, that's the only reason why she was on the lead. If I didn't have her on a lead and have her more well managed at the time, that scenario likely would not have happened, because when my wife or myself, we would walk the girls on Grand Avenue, very clearly open and without leads, and people were stunned and amazed that our dogs were focused on us. They didn't even turn their heads looking at other people, other dogs. They were focused on us, and it was like an army. And so again, creating expectation and boundaries, and the dogs follow, and they were really good. And this is one of the reasons why I've always preferred to have my dogs when I'm walking, and my wife at the time, she preferred to have the dogs not on lead. because then that creates a scenario that criminals and thieves don't like. And that's the possibility of being attacked by the dog. And that's the value in having a protected breed dog when you walk the streets or even in your home. Because even in my home, she protects everything when I need to step out. So I don't have to worry about anybody going in my place and stealing stuff, because she knows that nobody's supposed to be in there. Because historically, I don't allow anybody in there. It's just her and me, and once in a while a couple of people that she's familiar with, and that's it. And that's part of being consistent and having routine. What are the routines? The dog remembers those routines, and those are very important in managing that dog. And so once the dog understands that something is not routine, what's wrong, and do I need to take action? And that's what the purpose of a guard dog is, and a protection dog is, when they're properly trained. And no dog is trained to attack people. They have to learn that, and they have to have reason. And I say that because decades ago on a job site, I had a client that had a renter in the property, and the renter had a very, very aggressive dog. I was even warned by the landlord about this dog and how dangerous it was. And it was a pit bull Rottweiler mix, and it had chomped everybody in the neighborhood. And I said, oh, okay. And then when I actually met with that tenant about the dog, I saw the dog in the yard, and the dog attacked the door aggressively, and I just stood there looking, and I asked one simple question. I understand your dog is aggressive and everything. Where are you going to have her, so that, we can do the work on the home? And so there was a shed out back, and anyway, the long story short is that, what happens if she got out of that shed? And then the tenant assured me that the dog would not get out of that shed. Well, lo and behold, that tenant hadn't even been gone an hour. Dog was out of the shed. I was on a ladder on the side of the house working, and all of a sudden I hear woof. Let me back up a moment. One of the questions that I did ask the owner of the dog, is that dog professionally trained for attack? And the homeowner said, no, it's not a trained attack dog. It just bites everybody except us, because we feed it. Said, oh, okay. So already gave me a clue that the dog is attacking people through fear and people triggering its prey drive. Prey drive is what makes the dog aggressive. And if you show no signs of fear or looking like food, the dog's going to question your presence. And that's what the dog was doing, because it literally was looking around the corner curiously at me and went woof. And I turned around and looked, and hey, what are you doing out? And so that surprised the dog, because the dog expected, its expectation was me to show fear and run, and that triggers the prey drive. I didn't do that. In fact, I asked the dog a question, and then the dog was like, oh, this isn't routine. And so it starts backing up, and then I get off the ladder and I come to the dog in a friendly manner, and the dog backed up. And then I just go to a yard and say, what are you going to do? You going to bite me or what? And so the dog's checking me out. I allowed the dog to come approach me. I put my hand out in a non-aggressive manner, I get down, on my knee so that I'm closer to its level, so that I'm not triggering its fear. And so it's like, oh, okay. And so the dog comes to me, and finally, allowed the dog to sniff me, get my scent and everything. And when the dog was through checking me out, it simply walked away. It's like, oh, okay, you're no danger. And at lunchtime, I had some extra food. I gave some of my lunch to the dog, and after that, we were buddies, for the whole job. And in fact, the homeowner was actually or not the homeowner, but the renter was not happy with me because they thought they had a killer dog that was going to eat everybody. And then he comes home and finds me in the backyard with his dog, leaning up against me, and my arm again around her, and she's my buddy. And he comes out, what have you done to my guard dog? It's like, I didn't do anything. She's not really aggressive. She's a sweet dog. I said, she's just more lonely than anything. The only reason why she's biting people is because, number one, she don't know them, and this dog only knows you and your son. So the dog sees everybody as an enemy. So I explained everything to this individual, and they calmed down and chilled out and figured out that I meant no harm to them or the dog, and I was just pointing out their fallacies in training and in management. So any dog that is not professionally trained for attack is very hesitant and may not bite in a way that is truly a real harmful bite. It's more of a threatening bite. Those that are trained for aggression, for guard duty, for protection duty, oh yeah, they can take a chunk out of you. It's my pity, Pandora. I called her my four-legged piranha. She took chunks out of people, and I mean literally took chunks out of them. And I work to her strengths, and that's the thing about protected breed dogs. You have to work to their strengths, because some dogs are so powerful that you may not be able to overpower them, to stop them. And that's why it's so important to have good management with the animal, a good bond, and the animal fully understanding expectation and boundaries. Out here, the only dogs that I've ever had problems with weren't mine, but they were with other folks who didn't have proper management of their animals, and many times I ended up with my hands chewed up from their pit bull, and I'm trying to separate their dog from attacking mine, or breaking up another pair of dogs fighting here in the streets. And so over the years, I've had many injuries to my hands from dog fights because of poor management. And that's one of the things that's real important about whether you're housed or unhoused, is having good management skills of your animal. And a lot of the folks here, all my neighborhoods, they see me walking Mama daily, many times a day, and rarely ever with a lead. I'll have the lead around my neck, in case I need it. But in most cases, I could just simply speak what I want. I don't need to yell. I don't need to elevate my voice in any way. I just talk in a normal fashion to my dog, and she responds. And that's how it should be. When you're properly managed, you shouldn't have any issues with having to yell at the dog, strike the dog in any way. I don't hit or strike my animals during training or even correction, because it's not helpful. What that does, it creates mistrust when you strike the animal. And so I don't want to do that. I want to have them trust me 100%. And then if I call them to come back to me, I want them to respond 100% of the time at that moment, not a minute from now, at that moment. And sometimes it may take breaking their concentration on something that they're focused on. And so when I have to do that, just like that, and just slap your hands, clap your hands, and it snaps them momentarily, changes their focus, and that's when you regain your management of that animal. And so I've never had a problem with her with being aggressive to dogs, because I've worked with her at being non-reactive to dogs. When there's a dog around that she doesn't like, she will speak her mind. She'll whine and let me know that she has some anxiety and she's nervous about going by a certain place. But that's to be expected. And then you talk them through it to keep them calm. So animal management is a lot of work, and you have to put in the time, is what the requirement is, in order to have a happy household and no problems. I always tell people, I say, you will never have a problem or an issue out of any dog that I am managing and I am the owner of. And so that's worked out really well. And a lot of folks here, they even this dangerous, vicious dog that's labeled here in Oakland allows people to pet her. And she's non-reactive now because she's learned boundaries. She's learned expectations. And so Mama's gotten really good. And so anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I've spoken too long. But anyway, I've got new shoes coming for Mama. We're hanging on to these to see which one fits the best, as this one was kind of right, but it slipped around, and so I want to try the larger size. Whichever one fits the best is what I'm going to keep and send the other one back. But thank you for joining me today for animal management, and we'll be right back.